Hi, I'm Thomas Hunt.
And I'm Peter Parker.
And this is the Bad News Network. This Thursday, President Biden addressed the nation at the U.S. Capitol in the statuary hall regarding the events that transpired in the very Capitol 1 year ago. To be honest, it felt a little like all he did was yell at America for 20 minutes. The most awkward part of the entire endeavor was this overall feeling I got that I was being made sure to remember about the event and who was responsible, even though I have quite a decent enough memory to recount and understand this for myself. Let me see if I can give an example of the awkwardness I was feeling during this speech. Have you ever had someone constantly tell you their side of things too much? Let me give you an example. Let's say one day you ask your significant other a terrible nagging feeling that you have reason to believe that they may have slept with someone else while you were away. They assure you this didn't happen. Maybe they even give a reasonable fact or two to support this. Fair enough, sweetheart. I guess I was just letting my overactive imagination get the better of me. You arrive at the end of the conversation convinced and closer than before with your partner. But then 1 week later, your significant other decides to throw out a few other reasons that they thought of over the past few days of why your suspicion of them cheating on you was ridiculous. You laugh and nod your head, of course, and agree, but give a bit of an awkward look as to why they're still thinking about it. Perhaps your birthday comes around and they wish you happy birthday while saying to you, "Do you like the cake I made for you? It's chocolate, your favorite." Someone who cheated on you wouldn't take the time to remember what your favorite cake was, would they? Maybe they mentioned it to you for a few of your guests at a Christmas party several months later. How crazy it would be to think that you accused them of infidelity on the particular incident mentioned many times before. The room erupts in casual yet uncomfortable coughing chuckles. Finally, on the exact date, 1 year later after the initial argument transpired, they feel the need to give you a long speech and remind you how they never had outside relations with another person, that everything is fair and right in the world, and they just love you so much, and we're so glad the argument didn't tear you guys apart. At this point, you probably would have forgotten about the whole thing if it wasn't for the fact that they keep bringing it up, like a terrible landlord that comes by every couple weeks to add a couple more supporting beams all over your rented house to keep the roof from falling in. You get what I mean? And yes, it was quite an impactful event for everyone on January 6th. But from my position of events, it seems that since the insurrection, we have a lot more pressing problems, much more likely to destroy the foundations of American society today than January 6th, such as the threat of catastrophic inflation, an almost 2-year pandemic, the buildup of Russian forces on the border of Western European civilization, the recent ineptitude and continuing humanitarian crisis because of the hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan. Within the current party, we still can't even agree on best courses of action on dealing with this pandemic and keeping necessary testing instruments available. I found myself asking exactly what the point was bringing all of this up again. The questions of fraudulent elections were investigated for months, and votes were recounted everywhere, so it couldn't be that. The next presidential election won't be for another 2 years, and democracy was declared victorious over this, so it couldn't be that. Those that broke into the Capitol are being sentenced one by one as we speak. Their due punishments are being handed out, so it couldn't be that. Trump actually canceled the event he was going to give on this day as well, so there wasn't any need to counteract any partisan lies he might resurrect, so it couldn't be that. In fact, you guys brought up Trump, and now I have to talk about him because you mentioned it. Personally, I haven't thought about anything he's been doing for some time. This is awkward. Yes, January 6th was embarrassing for everyone. Hell, that whole year was. But to compare it to another American event such as 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, are you out of your mind? The part that makes me cringe the most is knowing that the entire team of speechwriters worked diligently on this message alongside the administration and actually passed this as a decent proof and a message that would be great for the American people. Again, this is just how I view it. Give your opinions in the comments below. We would love to hear them. As long as it's not about that thing where people said I butchered 3 people in the summer of 2009 at Conewago Lake with a hatchet, because that's just ridiculous.
In a last-ditch effort to destroy our spirit, 2021 decided to take one of the last beacons of hope and a magnificent ray of sunshine, Betty White. She passed away last Friday at the age of 99, only 3 weeks away from her 100th birthday. God damn you, 2021! For a while, I assumed that Betty had found the fountain of youth or some sort of Wolverine-type healing factor that was going to keep her alive forever. But alas, those dreams died and were snuffed out. Betty started her career back in 1939 on an experimental TV broadcast because, electronics and technology were still being figured out. From that point on, Betty knew she wanted to be on television and portrayed beloved characters on The Golden Girls, Boston Legal, and Hot in Cleveland. She also hosted Saturday Night Live as the oldest person to ever do so and got destroyed in a Snickers commercial where she did her own stunt, so she actually took that hit. That old broad took the hit like a champ and kept on going. In 2014, she made an appearance on WWE Monday Night Raw where she backflipped off the top of the cage onto Triple H to claim the heavyweight championship. Well, at least that's how I'm going to tell that story. Betty was in show business for over 70 years and was given the Guinness Book World Record for longest television career by a female entertainer. She has won about every award possible for an entertainer. American Comedy Awards, a Grammy, SAG Awards, MTV Movie Awards, People's Choice Awards, and 5 Emmys, which she was nominated for over 20. Betty was an icon in the film industry, and 2021 is a huge dick for taking her from us. Betty's legacy will remain steadfast with episodes of Golden Girls on repeats and the remembrance of her true kind-heartedness. We will miss you, Betty. The world got a little darker, but I know heaven's a lot brighter. Now that Betty has passed, we have to focus our positive mental thoughts to Angela Lansbury, Dolly Parton, and Dame Helen Mirren.
The United Nations Security Council, which includes the US, China, Russia, Britain, and France, have agreed that nuclear war is bad, okay? In a joint statement posted by the 5 nuclear powers published by the Kremlin, the group said that they consider it their primary responsibility to avoid nuclear war and the spread of nuclear arms. The group has agreed to pursue negotiations in good faith relating to the cessation of the nuclear arms race and the nuclear disarmament. This pledge comes ahead of the latest review of the Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear War, which was scheduled to take place at the United Nations headquarters in New York, but has been postponed to later in the year. The goal of the NPT is to provide a spread of nuclear arms and weapons technology while still giving countries the right to harness the power for peaceful purposes. But right now it's like we're all cavemen who are continuing to gather the biggest rocks we can find while trying to convince each other that we aren't going to throw them at each other and bash each other's brains in. This seems like we are taking positive steps towards not destroying the entire planet. But the relations between the United States and Russia has been its lowest point since the end of the Cold War, and there's no trusting China. In November, the Pentagon increased the amount of projected nuclear warheads produced by China, saying that they could have over 700 warheads by 2027 and possibly 1,000 by 2030. That doesn't sound like a de-escalation to me. Tensions between Russia and most of the world are also high because Russia is doing some sketchy stuff along the continuing military buildup near the Ukraine border. Biden told Putin that this could draw sanctions against Russia, which Russia responded by saying, "Thanks, but we're gonna do whatever the we want." On Monday, officials to the United States and Russia will hold security talks to discuss rising tensions over this Ukraine issue, which will probably result in Putin just keeping on Putining. There was a major nuclear treaty that was supposed to begin on Tuesday at the United Nations, but has been postponed until August due to COVID. So that means everyone has about 7 months to make and sell as many nuclear weapons as possible, or use all the ones they have now, so when the treaty comes around, they will be good to go.
Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has been convicted of defrauding investors after a months-long landmark trial in California. Jurors found Holmes guilty of conspiracy to commit fraud against investors and 3 charges of wire fraud. Once the miracle of the biotech industry of Silicon Valley, the firm promised it would revolutionize the healthcare industry with a test that could detect conditions such as cancer and diabetes with only a few drops of blood. But in 2015, a Wall Street Journal investigation revealed that absolutely none of these claims of innovation were true whatsoever. Why did it take so long? Well, her company secretly relied on commercially available machines to run the tests that would validate conditions outside of their own technology. This, coupled with her asking major board members to stay hush about any shortfalls in the project and downplay their concern, was the nail in the coffin for Elizabeth. Holmes faces up to 20 years in prison as well as a fine of $250,000 plus restitution for each count. A very fair price that deserves payment for being such a liar for the sake of image and success that had thousands if not millions of people misled for the sake of profit. Holmes was just the latest pitfall that people should look out for in Silicon Valley culture. It celebrates and encourages very young, marginally experienced people to live up to the expectations of the initial success stories that founded the area. But Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg come around very rarely. Pretending to play the part only buys you so much time what the utility of the concept needs to show, and you got nothing. Fake it till you make it turned out pretty expensive phrase to live by for Elizabeth.
Lawrence Brooks, the oldest living American veteran who served during World War II, passed away this Wednesday at the age of 112. 112! Lawrence was only 9 years away from being born in what people could call the 1800s. Brooks was born in 1909 and was one of 15 children. When he was 31, he was drafted to the Army after the attack on Pearl Harbor and served in the military for the next 5 years. Lawrence served in the 91st Engineer Battalion, which was largely African American because when Lawrence joined the Army, it was still segregated. During his time in the military, Lawrence earned the Good Conduct Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, and Presidential Unit Medal. Lawrence didn't see combat during his time in the military, but he did have a couple intense experiences, like when he was on a resupply flight from Australia to New Guinea, and one of the engines went out on the aircraft, and the crew had to drop heavier cargo in order to compensate. Many of Lawrence's military awards were lost during Hurricane Katrina, but his daughter had taken on the responsibility of replacing them. Lawrence is survived by his 5 children, 13 grandchildren, and 32 great-grandchildren. When someone asked him the secret to his longevity and long-lasting good health, he said it was simple: be nice to people. I think we could all use a little more of that.
The Omicron variant of the coronavirus is currently stomping a stone-cold Steve Austin-sized mud hole in the chest of the United States. On Monday, Johns Hopkins reported that over 1 million new cases of COVID, which is also the highest single-day record of newly reported cases, occurred. The United States had the highest 7-day average for newly reported COVID cases of any country, according to Johns Hopkins. The Omicron variant accounts for the majority of these new cases. Even though the amount of hospitalizations has been on the rise, the amount of deaths from the recent surge have been far less than previous surges. Having less deaths from COVID is clearly a good thing. But one of the larger issues with rising hospital admissions due to COVID is that hospitals are running out of beds for people in serious conditions like heart attacks, car crash victims, or children that have gotten the flu. Many hospitals across the United States and the world have been packed to the brim with new COVID patients and don't have beds to spare with other people who are also in really bad shape. People are getting vaccinated, and once they have gotten COVID and recovered, their bodies have built up what is being called a natural immunity. Even though cases are on the rise, researchers are saying that the Omicron variant could actually lead to the end of the pandemic coming sooner than previously expected. Scientists are saying that the variant has a high transfer rate and is dangerous to unvaccinated and unboosted individuals, but people who have been vaccinated and recovered from the Omicron variant have built up an immunity that will help them combat newer variants that may come to light. About 62% of the United States has been vaccinated against COVID, and 30% of that group has received a booster, which helps bolster protection against the Omicron variant. Even though scientists are hoping that this variant could quicken the timeline to the end of the pandemic, the virus has been very volatile the past 2 years and taken some very unpredictable turns. Besides vaccinations and boosters, one of the best things you can do to combat the chance that you could get COVID is to try and live a healthier lifestyle. Eat right, drink water, and work out. In people who have tested positive for COVID, one of the largest groups affected despite being vaccinated is people who are unhealthy or obese. Getting in shape could also lower the chances of getting heart disease and diabetes. Also a win, am I right? Both diabetes and obesity directly affect how a person's immune system works, and diabetes directly increases the risk of infection in general. Even with the possibility of the pandemic coming to an end sooner than expected, COVID is never going to go away. The best thing we can hope for is that it becomes an endemic or a seasonal disease. I know people are not going to get vaccinated or wear a mask. People have fought this fight for the past 2 years, and changing someone's mind is like trying to herd cats. But getting in better shape and being healthy is good for you all around. You will feel better, look better, and just be safer from diseases in general. Win, win, win.
And finally, in Florida Man news, since we missed you guys so much last week, we're doubling down on the amount of Florida this week. In what seemed to be a last-ditch effort to get into the BNN Florida Man of the Year competition, 2 men decided to be very Florida in the last 2 weeks of the year. First up, we have the drunk, dirty, smelly Florida version of Gandalf, 74-year-old Daniel Zarelli. Instead of riding a horse and wielding a staff or sword, Zarelli is much more Florida traditional, gallivanting on his trusty electric scooter while kitchen knife in hand. Zarelli was arrested after he chased 2 people around his neighborhood on his electric scooter and tried to stab them with a knife he got from the kitchen. Why, you ask? Parking dispute? Loud parties? Maybe he was getting revenge for a decade-long blood feud? Nope, he was just drunk and bored. How Florida, Zarelli. Zarelli started by following a woman and tried to chase her with his scooter, saying that he wanted to kill the woman, but eventually set his sights on another man in his neighborhood who he also wanted to kill while he had a chance. Unfortunately for Zarelli, most electric scooters max out at like 3 miles an hour, so both people were able to briskly walk away and avoid any injuries. And second, we have an unidentified Florida man who we will just refer to as Dick. Dick was driving around when he was stopped by police. Generally in Florida, there's a chance of finding a missile or a half-dead animal corpse in the car, but Dick didn't have any of those things. He did, however, have cocaine and meth taped to his penis. When police searched him, they realized he may have something under his shorts when they felt what they thought was a stack of craft singles, but it turned out to be drugs. When asked about the drugs, Dick said that they were not his, which is of course complete bullshit. Unless someone snuck into his house in the dead of night, taped random drugs to Dick's penis, and then somehow Dick went the whole next day without realizing he had stuff taped to his dick. If that's the case, Dick probably had a boner to pick with that guy. As we start 2022 and reminisce about all the Florida men stories we have covered the past year, we are overjoyed with the thought of what Florida man will be up to this year and all the depraved stories we will get to report on. And with that, this is not the Conewago Lake Killer.
And I'm Pokey.
And this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, and all this coffee makes me have to really go to the bathroom. It might be a real extreme dump. Maybe compare it to Pearl Harbor? I mean, everything's on the table now. As always, you can get 25% off your order with code BNN at rangerup.com. Also, be sure to check out Nick and Matt's OnlyFans page at Nick and Matt. They'll be back next week. See you guys then.